Welcome to Homegrown Learning and Living, the podcast that brings you real, heartfelt stories from homeschool families, past and present. I'm your host, Mandy, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this enriching journey through the world of home education. Join me as we sit down with extraordinary individuals, parents, children, and even graduates who have embraced the path of homeschooling. Through insightful conversations, we'll unravel the unique experiences, uncovering the challenges, triumphs, and unforgettable moments that define our homeschooling journey. But it's not just about academics. It's about nurturing a lifestyle of curiosity, exploration, and genuine connection. We'll hear about the creative ways families foster socialization, community involvement, and personal growth. So whether you're a seasoned homeschooling family or someone curious about this incredible educational journey, you're in for a treat. A new episode drops every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so be sure to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me on this voyage of exploration and discovery. Let's celebrate the beauty of learning and living one homeschool story at a time. In this episode, we have the pleasure of sitting down with a remarkable mompreneur who is here to share her inspiring journey as a young homeschool mom. She has embraced the adventure of home education and is ready to provide us with a unique glimpse into her world of nurturing curiosity, fostering creativity, and creating a dynamic learning environment within the comfort of her own home. Kyanna, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you mind starting out telling us about yourself and what led you to the decision of homeschooling?
Yeah, hi. So thanks, Mandy, for having me on. I'm really excited to have met you and connected. Like she said, my name's Kyanna, and we, recently have relocated to Texas, which is great for our mental health with a lack of winter. But if you want to know a little bit about me and what led me to homeschooling, so me and my husband, it's kind of a little bit of a long story, but I'll tell it. Me and my husband, we met within 2 months. We were pregnant. Within 5 months, we were married, and we had our first kid. And we were both in retail management and both working offset schedules with the help of family to support our childcare necessity, for our first. Shortly after he was born, 3 months after, I was pregnant with our second. It was within, our second year of marriage, second year of even knowing each other. And our family said, look, this is just going to be too much. We're watching your kids, on our days off. And so I understood, it is a big responsibility. 2 infants, and they call them Irish twins. And in such a short amount of time, I had to figure out, well, what's the next step for me? So I called childcare places and I was like, can I apply to be a teacher? And the response was, you have 2 kids, you're not even going to make enough to cover their discounted tuition. And I was like, okay, but there's still got to be a way. And I'm a big fan of asking, but how can I find the resource? How can I make something happen? That there doesn't have to be an excuse. So I still applied, and I showed up for the interviews that they said I wasn't going to be able to afford. And before I remember going to these interviews, I am a spiritual person. I believe in God. And I called one of my friends and I said, hey, I have this interview. I'm so nervous. And she said, well, what if you looked at it from God's perspective and said, what if they think it's so amazing and it turns into a bigger position? Okay, so then I got into the mindset like, okay, it's going to go great and it's going to turn into something better than I could have expected. I show up to the interview and I went to the wrong location. So they sent me over to the other location. The manager wasn't available and just said, don't even come. It's okay. I'm like, no, I'm going to show up to my interview. So I showed up to the interview and, she said, well, with your management background and your personality and everything, I think maybe you could do an assistant manager position, and that would use your retail management skills, and then you can just learn the ropes of childcare and licensing and all of the logistics. And so that's what I did. But I got offered, an assistant manager position in a really low income neighborhood in Minnesota. And there's just so many cultural differences. And, I have my 2 babies, and I'm doing it out of necessity. And there was something in me from that experience that felt like, man, this isn't the right path for my kids. They're crying in their classrooms all day. There's boundaries that I couldn't walk on, like going in my child's classroom, and say they were crying or they needed something. I'd get looks from teachers like I was overstepping the line trying to care for my child in the workday. And so that didn't sit right with me from day one. So then I asked to be relocated to a location closer to where we lived, and in a neighborhood that just resonated with how I was raised. So we moved to that neighborhood. I mean, we relocated, and it's still like, man, this is not it. For me, I was, as a manager, you work wild hours. I mean, you are there when someone else doesn't show up. You're there late. I mean, it was just a hefty responsibility for a mom with young kids. So I'm still in childcare, and I have my 3rd baby. I get offered a management position in Texas. We moved to Texas at that point. I had an awful experience at one of the locations that I got hired on. When we moved to Texas, I just told my hiring manager, I'll just support you in your district wherever you need support. She sent me to the worst. I mean, I just had a horrible experience. I mean, they were having one teacher for 8 babies, and my baby was in that classroom, and I just called her and said, I'm not going back there. I would help you, but I didn't know it was that bad. I didn't know that they were out of these licensing standards. And Texas licensing, okay, has like these extreme numbers. Like, you can have a lot of kids per teacher compared to Minnesota, and they're already pretty loose with the rules. And so coming down here and then being treated like that when I'm trying to help was just not acceptable. So, this is like a 4-year span that I ignored the gut of getting out of childcare. I got offered a management position at the best building. I had the best staff. And I then applied for a company that I thought was alongside some of the values that I had, and I actually got fired from them. But here's the deal. Because I believe in God, I totally felt like he was like, you've been ignoring me for 4 years, and your intuition, sit down. And so he sat me down at my house with my kids, and we have had, a learning curve of how do you focus on your children. Because in the management positions and the roles that I had taken on, and just my perspective of work, I take it so seriously sometimes that it's ridiculous. And I mean, I can just laugh at that now, because you can have fun at work, and I just didn't think you could. So, yeah, we're at a learning curve, and I've just learned so much about what can education look like, what does it have to look like, what doesn't it have to look like. And there is something that's been said, like connection before correction. And there's a lot of different things that are like sayings that are super helpful to remind you of just slowing down. And for me, slowing down can be difficult. But anyways, all of my perspectives of what people try to do, when behind closed curtains in any building, in the workforce, in childcare, it just really brought me back to, I need to raise my children to the best of my abilities and focus on them, and nurture them, because I had ignored nurturing them, for years. And so that just wasn't fair for them. And so once I said, I'm not going to look for a job, my husband was at a point in his career where that was okay. Now his circumstances have changed, but we're still not jumping back on that bandwagon that we know wasn't working. There can be, like I said, other ways to do things. And if you're a mom that wants to homeschool and it's not financially, quote unquote, like something that you can make work where you think that, I would challenge you to get creative. And I would really, really just dig into resources like this, Mandy's podcast, to help you start to analyze things just a little bit differently and look at how are people doing it on a low budget, because it's totally possible. And it doesn't have to be an expensive co-op, and it doesn't have to be an expensive curriculum. It doesn't have to. It can. If that's something that you can afford and that you are passionate about, it totally can. But it doesn't have to. And there's other people out there that are doing it in the way that you want to do it too. So that's my long story of home education and a little bit about me. Something else I want to just say is back to just like the working in different neighborhoods and different things. I am not against any community or any people group. I love to learn from other people, but there is going to be natural environments where your children will thrive and where they won't. And so I just wanted to circle back around to that to make sure that there's no offense or anything to that. My children just weren't thriving in that atmosphere of childcare in general. And that's really what I saw in all the different aspects, is no matter where we were, that atmosphere just of childcare was not a suitable one for my family.
Definitely. You have to listen to your intuition.
Mm.
How old are your kids now?
So my kids now are, my oldest is 6, the middle one will be 5, currently 4, and then the youngest is 3. So for a while we had a 5-year-old, 4-year-old, and 3-year-old. And they've just been back to back, and people will ask, like, how do you do that? And at first I'm like, gosh, like, out of like just almost annoyance, I'm like, well, what's the other option? Like, would you like to take one? But the thing about motherhood is you get up and you do it no matter what. Mm-hmm. And that's where we as moms have a kind of a responsibility to choose, our perspective. There's every day you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. You're going to feel accomplished and you're not going to feel accomplished. But you can have a perspective in a mindset shift that what you're doing is super important. And no matter if you have wins or losses, you're put in a place where you just have so much influence in a child's life. And they will soon be adults. And those tiny habits and tiny responses to the world around you really get soaked up and soaked in, and just can accumulate.
Yes, very true. I heard somebody recently say you only have 18 summers with your kids, and I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
Really puts it into perspective. Do you have a plan on structuring your daily routine for the kids, or have you already started anything?
Okay, so here's the thing, that is always a question that I have, is like, how routine do you need your day to be? Mm-hmm. And part of it is a rhythm, like getting into kind of just a rhythm. I think that's more important than routine, and then timing. Like routine and rhythm, I guess I use in the same sense, as far as like, we wake up, we have breakfast, we do this, and then that. But for us, it has so fluctuated in the seasons that we've been in, and we haven't been doing this for a whole like lengthy amount of time, but I think you as a parent need to give yourself grace. But one thing, when you do change your rhythm, when you do change kind of how your day looks, it's so helpful, what I've noticed, to give my children heads up. Hey, today this is how it's going to look. So knowing kind of what you'd like to do that day, being able to talk to them about it in advance, and then giving them a heads up when that is coming. In about, an hour, or after we eat breakfast, we are going to head to this place, and then we're going to head to this place, and then we'll head to this place. Your children remember. And so that's just a simple way to build trust and to build like a confidence in what you're saying, a confidence in your word for your children if you're struggling with that with your child. And then it's also just a way to prepare their minds for what to expect for the day. And I didn't think it was a big deal, like, why do they need to know? But as my children get older, it's nice to know kind of what you're doing. I mean, I asked my husband, what are we going to do this weekend? Are we going to go to church today? Are we not going to church? Where are we going? Are we going to St. Mattress? I'm just kidding. So it's nice to know what to anticipate when someone else is utilizing your time. And I think that's the same with your children. It's nice for them to get a heads up of this is what we're going to be doing today. So that's my answer for that one. I just think include your children where you can.
So I know for me, we live on a small little hobby farm, and we do get a lot of socialization, but I can see how moms with small children, that could be lacking in a lot of ways. So do you guys get socialized a lot? Are you concerned about their socialization, or what kind of community things do you guys have?
So moms that don't homeschool or can't wrap their brains around what that would look like oftentimes can't conceptualize a socialized child. But that's such like an American kind of cultural thing to just be doing and being. For us, because it's my personality, I like to be around other people. And so from the beginning of being home, I joined a Wild and Free group, and they have those for free all over. Wild and Free is like a book. It's a nature kind of based community. And they are based off of Charlotte Mason kind of principles of just being outside and breaking away from the patterns. I mean, it's so good, like just really great principles. And that's been so helpful with my son. I mean, we would spend at least 3 hours outside every day, and that's his happy place. I mean, there's no correction that I have to do when we're outside. He can get dirty, he can climb, he can play, he can create. There's nothing. So we joined one of those groups. That's been great. Also, just to get to know our area. The way that she has our group formatted is we meet at a different park every Friday. And so that's also helped me go and look at what's around in our area and just become familiar with other parks, and then also meet other moms and their journey. And I have some of my greatest friends right now in this season of life from that group. And then recently, because I'm not a consistent individual, just naturally. So, especially with my kids' ages. So, I wanted to somehow get them in like classical conversations or a co-op or something. And it just so happened that I had met another mom that is in a co-op or did a co-op last year. And they meet every Wednesday. And this mom is amazing. She has it all planned out from here to the end of the year. They do one field trip a month. You can see the schedule. I mean, you can see the prices, what you're going to be paying, and it's only $25 per family per semester. So I'm like, yep, sign me up. And that is a way for them to learn together. It's a way for me to get kind of like a baseline of different themes that we can learn about or do. And then it's also consistent friends for my kids in a learning atmosphere. And so, I mean, there's co-ops everywhere. You can go to a big co-op, you can go to a small co-op, you can go to something that's facilitated by a friend, you can create your own co-op. I mean, there's just so many different opportunities, and you can make whatever opportunity you want. So that's a new thing that we're trying that out. But something that's so interesting also to comment on socialization is your child's sociability with you around is such a different child without you around. Or in different atmospheres. So what I've noticed with my son, he seems like such a silly, outgoing child. But for instance, on Saturday, Home Depot has these free workshops where they can do like little hands-on projects and stuff. That's so great. It's a great resource for your engineering mind child. We went there on Saturday, and my husband told him to ask not his friend, this was a girl that's sitting next to him, for some paint. I have never seen him get so red and so shy. He would not look at her. He asked, like, looked like the quietest voice, like, "Can you get me some paint?" And she was like, "What?" And so I just think, like, for the sociability, just like us, there's other environments that you may or may not feel as confident and posed in. And so it's just going to different experiences with your children to see how they respond. And I've read this book, and it really talks about the mom being like a coach. You notice the weak spots in your relationship or in your player on the field, and then you put them deliberately in circumstances or situations that would help to stretch or grow that muscle. So, for instance, I hate going to the grocery store. It is terrible for me right now with all three kids. They'll run, they'll fight, they'll do just crazy stuff. So, what I've noticed is I could either avoid that or just set really clear boundaries and expectations. And once they're not met, if I'm doing this as a practice, we can leave. We don't have to stay in the store. I can shut it down until that's a habit to be in the store like normal adults. And then also your expectations of your child. Oftentimes we get so frustrated with our children when they're not behaving. And it's so easy when you see like reels and stuff, like, oh, my child is doing this. But to just really ask yourself, what was my expectation of them with this glass of milk without a top on it? Did I really expect my 3-year-old not to spill that? I mean, that's kind of an unrealistic accusation. If you didn't want them to spill the milk, then put a top on it and make it non-spillable. But I think recognizing also just like what is our expectation and how were we responding in that moment, and it's really important to take time to reflect on our own actions and on our own expectations on all of that.
Yeah, definitely. I love how you mentioned some of the things that you're doing between the Home Depot Saturday creativity events. I have not gone to one, but we have those here. But that is a really great resource, especially for the moms with young kids. And then you mentioned Wild and Free, and is that what you guys are doing currently?
So we do that on Fridays, and that's just like a Friday meetup. There's no preparation for parents. You bring your own lunch. It's just like a gathering.
Okay.
And there's different groups like that are bigger and smaller and that accept more people or less. But the co-op is another thing. And that's more of a structured, the parents are involved in teaching lessons. You're involved in bringing supplies. So that's a little bit more hefty of a responsibility than the Wild and Free group. So there's like a myriad of things.
The co-ops are so overwhelming to start researching.
You agreed? Oh, okay. I was overwhelmed when I went to the co-op.
Yeah.
I'm just an overstimulated individual. And so seeing like, between like 7 moms, sometimes in the homeschooling world, that could be a ton of kids. I mean, we are exponentially growing sometimes. And I was just like, wow, in awe of like actual teachers with other kids. Like, how do they run classrooms with 26 kids and maybe 2 adults? I was like, I couldn't even pay attention to what she was saying because I was like, there's just so much happening. And then you have to keep track of your own kids. And I mean, it was overwhelming for me, but I think, it will get better as we go on.
Yeah, so we do classical conversations.
Okay.
This will be our 2nd year at doing that, and it's only my oldest. So my other 2 get watched by my husband's parents while we do that, and it's once a week that we meet. So I could probably talk about that on a different time in case anybody's interested, because it is affordable and it is nice. And it was very overwhelming the first year because they teach Latin, geography, math, English, and like this whole range of things that you're teaching your 5-year-old. And I'm like, I don't even know this. It was so cool because I was learning. I know United States geography. I don't know world geography that well, but now I do.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting that you say it was affordable because I would disagree just because I have 3 kids, all together. And so part of that, like, oh, it's not affordable, is the pressure that I should put all of my kids in it, and
Yeah.
we don't have family here, so I don't have extra support to watch them. And so you would have to pay like a childcare fee. And each classical conversation, chapter has like different expectations of cost sometimes. And so it can be affordable, I think, and for other people, but I just think that homeschooling, that affordability kind of window can range drastically for each family.
Yeah, no, you're very
Yeah.
right about that. We as well as many homeschooling families are definitely on a very tight budget. So it's kind of like we save the amount that we need from our tax refund.
Yeah, like, okay, in this part of the year it will be coming.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it goes into a little pocket, and then when it's time, it comes out of the pocket.
That's so perfect. That's great.
Yeah. So, what would you say to the mom who wants to homeschool, but she doesn't necessarily think she's qualified? I hear that all the time where people say, well, you don't have a teaching degree, or just the feeling of failure. Like, why do we always have a feeling of we're going to fail our kids? And I mean, just for me, the thing that's in the back of my head is you don't know if you're doing it the right way until it's too late. And I try to not have that mindset. But what would you say to that mom who has some fear?
Well, some of the best advice is, I think just you in that realm are comparing yourself to some other standard. So if you don't think you're as qualified as a teacher, you're not. You're not a qualified school teacher. So don't try to compare yourself to a school teacher. You're not as qualified as Mandy to teach her own kids? You're not. You're not Mandy, and you're not those child's mom. I think, what are you basing qualifications off of? And what are you basing education, like your ideal of education? Because the whole point of doing homeschooling, or a huge part of it, is for your child. It's not about you. It's about your child. And it's about educating that child. And so part of that is like, how does your child learn best? Not how do you teach best necessarily, but how does your child learn best? Are they learning best through hands-on stuff? Then the curriculum that you bought that is all worksheets and school-based is not going to work, and you will feel like you're failing because it's not working. And so it's starting to look at your child and experimenting with that. Do they do best outside? Well, then you have to do your curriculum outside. It's going to be funner for you anyways and come with much more ease if you can start to just look at your own home. Stop comparing yourself and stop looking at all the products that you can buy, and really start looking at your child and what they need. And that's when you're going to feel, I think, the most successful, and you're going to start seeing the wins when you just take a breath and you can use everything around you, like the curriculum stuff, as a resource. What I heard from a friend when doing an interview for my own podcast was, curriculum is someone else's idea of how learning is fun. And some people need a micromanaging boss. Some people like a curriculum because it can get so detailed. It can tell you exactly what to do, what to say, even, how to say it. Okay, some people like that, like to be micromanaged. And some people want to know what does my child need to learn? They work it backwards. State standards, and then we can learn however we want.
Customizing the children's education is something that only the parent or the family member can accomplish. Like, I just don't see how that can get accomplished in a mainstream education environment. And so I just really love your insight on that. And I super appreciate you joining us today and sharing your insight. And I hope everybody will subscribe to my channel, but not just my channel. Kyanna has a channel of her own. Maybe you want to tell people how they can get a hold of you and the name of your podcast as well.
Yeah, so if you want to get in touch, I have an Instagram. It's simply Kyanna Brown. And I think that's where I'll just be sharing stuff from my podcast and just, things going on in life. But I do have a podcast. It's Soul Free Podcast. And really what that's about is getting our souls just a little bit more freer. And that's obviously a feeling. But right now we're in a graduate series talking to seasoned homeschooling moms about their learnings, about their perspectives, what worked well for them, and what they wish they would have known. It's super fun conversations. And then I think we're going to be moving into kind of all the things about our soul, about us, and how to really tend to our needs as moms. It's so easy to put ourselves on the back burners. And so we'll be just diving into that together. So come join us if that sounds like something that you could glean from.
Does your podcast have a schedule yet?
We've been releasing, as of last week, every Tuesday. So once a week. Tuesday. Yeah, every Tuesday.
Very good. Man, I can't wait to join. I love hearing from you, your insight. Your voice is so smooth and soothing. If I could just switch you.
No, your voice is great. It's lovely. Yeah. And your microphone is so good.
Oh, thank you.
It sounds so nice.
Fancy. Yeah.
It is really fancy.
This is a Samsung Q2U. I don't have affiliate links.
Get it. Get your links.
Yeah. Okay. Well, until next time, everybody, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining in. And thank you again, Kyanna, for joining us here.